Hello friends, welcome to SY Academy. In this video, we will discuss a very important topic, which is top 10 metrics which you should monitor in a distributed web application or web system. And this is very essential for IT and system design. And also, if you're giving one interview, they can ask you as a question in system design, high level design. Along with that, if you're building an application, it is important to monitor almost all of metrics. So why monitoring matters? First, quickly, it gives you visibility into the system health. Otherwise, you don't even know what is going on with your APIs, right? It also detects failure early, and you can take one action to fix that. It ensures that user experience is good. Sometimes what happens, let's say there are millions of users using your application, and some users are not having good experience. They will not give you any feedback. They will just stop using your application. So if you have any monitoring or alerting, right, you can understand, okay, this user is facing this problem during login, and you can take certain action. It also supports business KPIs. That means, let's say if you are in banking application, then what is your payment success rate, right? You can measure it through through monitoring, right? Let's look into the parameters which you should measure. The first parameter is request latency. Very, very important, right? What does latency specifically mean is how much time your request is taking, right? This is the latency, time between client request and server response. So this is a client application, this is server. Server is doing several things, right? Internally, let's say if it's a microservice based architecture, then how much time is being taken? This T1 plus T2 is your latency, right? So you usually measure tail latency. That means what is P95 or P P50, P99. What does P99 means? It's a percentile basically. That means 99% requests are taking how much time? Let's say if it is coming 2 millisecond or 200 millisecond, right? It means that 99%, 99 requests out of 100, 99 out of 100 are taking 200 milliseconds, right? This is P99, and it gives you a very good picture. Average is not good. Average, you should not measure average. Average will not give you right picture. P99 means maximum users are facing this problem, is solving this. Similarly, P95 means 95 users or 95 request, right? Request is a better word. Out of 100 are are having latency, let's say 100 milliseconds. This is P95, which also means that 5 requests are taking more than 100 milliseconds, right? Why it is important to measure percentile? Because average can hide outliers, right? Especially, let's say if one request is taking 600 millisecond, one request is taking 1 millisecond, right? Let's take one example. Then your average is 300 millisecond. And you might be thinking that, okay, my system is quite good, right? So that's why average should not be measured. How it should be measured? It should be measured through instrument API endpoints. You can use actuator, micrometer, any middleware, and you can visualize it in Grafana. You can also set alerts that if your P99 is going above a threshold, example, let's say if it is going beyond 5 minutes, then you can get one alert. Your SRE team, which is site reliability engineers, might get one alert if P99 is going above 5 minutes, and you can take right action. So this is first thing. Second thing which you should measure is error rate. Error rate means what are the 4xx and 5xx errors. Usually 4xx means user and client errors, right? Which could be bad input or some request not found or authentication is failing. 5xx error means server side bugs, crashes, and dependency issues. Basically, it's a error on your services, right? So you should basically measures what you should measure is failed request to total request ratio. This should be measured. Let's say if it is coming 10%, that means 10% requests are getting failed, right? And in that, let's say 4xx are 6% and 5xx are 4%, right? You can take a accordingly decision that, okay, why your client is even sending these requests. You can take those decisions. Why it is important? Spikes often indicate that there is some outage or some integrations are broken, either at server side or client side. You can count the status codes and take a decision. You should separately show 4xx and 5xx. You can also set one alert that if your error rate is more than 1% for 10 minutes, that means you need to take one action and something is going wrong. Especially friends, after your deployment, you should check your 5xx errors. If they are increasing, that means there is something wrong with your new patch or new deployment, right? Next metric is traffic, which is request per second or queries per second. This is a number of requests per second. And why it is important? It helps you know about the traffic surges. For example, India-Pakistan match was going on some time back, right? Or some sales event of Amazon, big sale event is going on, right? You need to take an action during, you should know about it and you should be taking some action during that moment of time. Also, it gives you a picture, friends. Let's say your system is running for 24 hours and between 7 a.m. to 10 a.m your load is quite low. Similarly, between 9 p.m. to 12 p.m., your load is quite high, right? So you can provision your servers accordingly. That means you can have more pods or servers here and less here, right? You can also take this decision, and also you can alert your team to be more cautious during this moment of time, right? How you can measure it? You can collect requests per second per endpoint per service, and it can compare with the baseline. So if there is 2x traffic, right? Or suddenly if the traffic is dropping to zero, that means something is wrong. If traffic is dropping to zero, that means you are not even getting the hits, right? Please note if your services are having several endpoints, you can measure queries per second or requests per second for each endpoint. For example, let's say there is API v1 user user create, right? This could have uh, two RPS, that means two requests per second. And your get query could be having 1,000 requests per second, right? This can also allow you to take decisions. Okay, let me put create in one server or one separate server, or maybe get in some other server which are having, let's say, 5 servers. Let's say you have 5 servers here and you have only 2 servers here. You can take certain decision like this also, right? Saturation of resources is another parameter which you should measure. It uh, it tells you the system is nearing capacity. How you should measure it? That means CPU usage percentage. Let's say you have one server who has reached 80% capacity. That means you need to have another machine, or you should rate limit your request, right? You should do something, otherwise your system will stop working. Memory usage, you should also measure how much is the heap versus non-heap memory. What is the thread pool utilization? Let's say you have only 1,000 threads per server, and if 900 are being used, you should do something. And connection pooling, please note that HTTP connection pooling or DB connection pooling are limited. If they are being overused, then you should take some action. Why it is important? Early warning helps you to avoid total failure. Friends, please note that it is better to keep our system running for 100 users at a moment of time, instead of saying that nobody is using our system, right? That means you can rate limit your system to avoid overusage, overheating, right? How you can measure it? You can measure it through JVM metrics, container metrics, right? And you can put an alert that if your CPU is 70% used, you should get an alert, right? After that, what you can do, you can maybe horizontally scale your system or do some other. Then the database performance is another thing which you should measure, very important. You can measure query latency. That means how much time your queries are taking. Let's say you have written one query which is select star from users, right? You have written a very bad query. Ideally, you should not write it. And if it is taking a lot of time, you should get one alert, or you should be able to measure how much time it is taking. You can then create an index or do something with your table, right? Also, you should get stats of slow queries, correction pool, what is the replication lag between your master and a slave. If master and slave are having large lag, that means your read might be obsolete, which means that it is slave is not having the right data or correct data from master. If there is a lag, and you should do something for this also. DB is usually the bottleneck in distributed systems. Usually the case is you have multiple servers, but many teams, what they do, they only keep one DB server. In that case, DB becomes a choke point. How you should measure it, use DB exporter or Hikari CP metrics. Please note that how it should be measured is a decision taken by architects and database administrators. In case of uh, in case of other metrics, your AWS team or DevOps team can also come in the picture to provide right metrics. You can also get an alert that if a replication lag between your master and slave is greater than 30 seconds, you should take some action. If pool utilization is more than 90%, something. Then next thing is what is cache performance? You can measure it through Grafana or New Relic. What is the cache hit ratio? That means how many times your cache is successfully hit, right? What are the affections? How much is the latency of your cache, right? If cache hit ratio is quite bad, that means your architecture is not right. All the requests are going to databases which are choking your system, right? And you should do something. Low hit ratio means wasteful DB load. Evictions may indicate poor sizing, right? If your cache is constantly getting evicted, that means something needs to be done. Either your size should be increased or you should have a better eviction policy. You can use Redis exporter or BAM cache instead to measure it. If hit ratio is less than 80% or eviction is greater than threshold, you should get an alert. Hit ratio is less than 80%, that means all your requests are going to database. Cache is totally kind of useless, right? Also, you can measure your if you're having event-based architecture, which is usually the case in modern systems, then you should measure queue and stream lag. That is difference between produced and consumed offsets Kafka and backlog size. For example, there is producer, there is consumer, and and there is a lot of lag. That means 1,000 requests are just sitting here and and the requests are processing at quite a less amount of time in your consumer. Let's say 10 requests per second, and this is 1,000 requests per second. Then something needs to be done. This is one example. Another thing is if the queue size at producer side is increasing, again you need to do something. Why it is important? Lag growth, consumers falling behind, delayed user actions. As you can understand, friends, in this, if this is your producer, this is Kafka. If your queue size is increasing at producer side, that means your consumer is not processing the request at right amount of time, and there will be a delay. And that delay is harmful, right? Let's say if you have to show real-time stats at this site, you won't be able to show it, and your request will be delayed to end users, affecting their experience. How it should be measured? Using Kafka exporter. If you're using RabbitMQ management API can also be used. You can set one alert that if lag is greater, if X messages for Y minutes or steady increasing slope, that means some action needs to be taken. Then dependency health. Also, you should look into this. What is the latency, availability, and error rate of downstream APIs? Let's say this is your service, and this is dependent on another vendor service, right? Then you should measure the health of this vendor service, which could be any service. Let's say if it's a service provided by NPCI for UPI payments, if it's a service provided by, let's say, some card printing vendor machine, then you should measure the health of this API. Also, please note that this could be an external system, right? External means outside your organization, or it could be an internal system. That means internal to your organization. You should measure the health of external systems. This will allow you to take better decisions, right? For example, what payment gateways does, if one payment gateway is having bad experience, they have dynamic switching and they switch it to other payment gateway system. Let's say if SBI's gateway system is not performing well, they can redirect and use HDFC payment gateway also. So this is very helpful in that case. Your app may look fine, but dependency failures will affect the user flow and your users will complain about it. How you can measure it? You can measure through error rate, or if they have provided one health API, you can use that. And you can wrap calls with metrics like micrometer and resilience 4J. What resilience 4J help in? If a request is failing at one site, it can redirect request to other site, right? If A is getting failed, it can redirect request to B. This is what resilience 4J can do. Also, you can set alerts that if error rate is greater than 5% for provider X, or if circuit broker is open for more than 10%, you should get an alert. Circuit broker means if one type of request are getting failed, then a circuit is open and the requests are redirected to other system. Availability and uptime also you should measure that percentage of time your services are up and responsive. It is a very important SLA, SLO, and customers feel downtime instantly. If your app is not working, let's say Google search or Facebook or Instagram, you will instantly come to know about it. You can have black box exporter to tell about this. You can have health checks and availability. If it is lower than SLA, then you also get fines, right? Let's say if you are a vendor system or a third party system and somebody is using your services, if availability is less than, let's say, 99%, then you need to pay something. Availability is very important and your system should be ideally be available most of the time, if not something more than 99.9 or 99 or 99.99, right? This should be the availability of your system. Business KPIs are also important. These are not related to tech, but they are very important. For example, if you are in a payment system, then authorization success rate, let's say if it should be greater than 60%. Please note 60% is a very good value. You might be surprised why I'm mentioning 60%. In e-commerce, orders created per minute. In banking, what is the success rate of your OTP, which is getting sent by your system? Even if infra is healthy, if your business KPIs are going down, that means your users are impacted. Also, please note that your profit is also impacted, right? That means business KPIs are very important. Customer app metrics, you can push it into Prometheus, and Prometheus will give it to Grafana. If KPIs are dropping more than 20%, you should get an alert. Please note that baseline is something which you and your team define as a company, right? For example, you want to define that, okay, my payment success rate should be greater than 70%. And some other companies saying, yes, our payment rate should be greater than 80%. So this could be different for different companies. Please note that at this point. Then connecting the dots, this was with this is important for, I mean, we have already discussed all 10 metrics. Now it is important that you should connect the dots, golden signals, latency, errors, traffic, and saturation. You should keep this thing in mind: latency, errors, traffic, saturation. Keep four things in mind that you need to measure it. For infra metrics, you should measure DB cache queues, right? DB means your MySQL, Mongo, etc., etc. Cache means Redis. Queue means if you're using Kafka or RabbitMQ. Similarly, dependencies you should measure dependencies and business KPIs. You should keep this thing in mind while defining your metrics. So this is all. If you have any question, you can write in the comment section. And if you want to discuss any metric in detail, I can do that also. Thank you.